We are in Paonia, Colorado. It is the West Elks AVA, and we are at 5,700 feet. And so what we get in Colorado is we get these really hot days and really cool nights, and that makes the diurnal shift very large, and you get grapes that ripen very smoothly, take their time, and you get flavors in the wine that are a bit brighter fruit, a bit higher rip and acidity. And when wine, you never say something's better or worse because everyone has their own flavors that they like, but what we're making here is special, unique in its own, and what I grow, Pinot Noir, is perfectly suited for this climate, and this is about the only place in Colorado you can grow it here.
Ben, to me, I don't even know what I could even try to guess what this is, but to you, this is something else. So what are we looking at here?
This is kind of the last piece of what my dad was doing for winemaking that I've now upgraded. So this is a basket press, and what I would do with it is you pour the fermented grapes in, wine comes out the spigot, and it goes into barrels. And to press it, you have a crank here, and you physically press. It's quite labor intensive. And it also only compresses from the top, so it's harder for the juice to run out. I think you get slightly worse quality wine with this thing compared to what I upgraded to.
Yeah.
And slowly over the years, I've just replaced what my dad had and scaled up, gotten better equipment. And this was the last thing to go. And I always knew I wanted to replace it. It was going to be about time, but right as I was putting everything away last year, I dropped it off the forklift, so it fell 4 feet and broke. And so it was time, and I got a new press. That is what we're going to be doing today. So
very cool.
Nice little relic for me, just kind of what I started with, what got me going. But I think I've upgraded and am making awesome wine both ways, but I think it'll be even better now.
We have a lot of stuff, a lot of contraptions going on around here. So what exactly is all of this?
Yeah, we're looking at the tank that we're pressing wine into and wine press. So that is a bladder press. What we're gonna do is pour must, so fermented grapes, seeds, skins, and wine into the top of that. And then once it's full, after a bunch of wine runs out into here, we turn on the press and water goes into a bladder in the middle of it and squeezes out. And that presses the rest of the skins and juice and grapes that aren't broken up out. So you get all the wine out. And then you empty it, you tilt it over, and we'll show that, and get it right back going to do it again. So this is kind of the final step of turning grapes into wine. So it is wine in there, but it's with all the skins. And we'll press it into here, and then I'll eventually pump this into barrels for proper storage, but this will settle. There'll still be some little pieces of grapes, some little, kind of just gunk stuff that settles to the bottom. You just pump that out and you're all good.
And then what material is this?
This is stainless steel, so super easy to clean, super durable. And I could store wine in the long term. I could just make wine in this, but for the wine style I'm trying to make, the barrel is super important.
Why is that?
The barrel allows some micro-oxidation, so that changes the aging process. You also get different flavors from the oak. So the oak leaches in a little bit. The wine kind of goes in and out of the oak. And that helps with the stabilization over time, stabilization with oxygen, and just creates a different mouthfeel, different flavors, different everything. And that's the style I like. I don't go heavy on oak, so I mostly do neutral oak barrels. So they've been used for 4 years or so. So they don't have a ton of oak flavor. They're not gonna make you, if you get wine with a new oak, if it's just new oak, the joke is that it'll give you splinters because there's so much oak flavor to it. So that's usually mixed in with other stuff. What I do is I just do neutral oak, and then I add a bit of extra auxiliary oak. So I have a little bit of playing around with each barrel to do. But that's about the only thing I add to the wine is the oak. So trying to keep it as close to just the grapes as possible.
Perfect. Let's get this going then.
Sweet. All right.
we just got done filling this tank up from this other white, I guess, bucket, or whatever you want to call it. And then you just set this kind of pressurized system thing up. So what exactly is that?
Yeah, so where I used to have to do the crank on the last pump, now literally all I do is switch the water pressure on and it does the pressing for me. And now I just get to hang out for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So the bladder fills up with water and squeezes out and presses the grapes to the side, just kind of pressing all the remaining juice and everything. And you can adjust the pressure and however you want to press it as hard or as soft as you want. And so I've got it dialed in. Now I can just kind of turn it on and it goes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Now I don't need as much labor help, you know, just trying to end jobs, trying to, as few jobs as possible is what I'm trying to do. This is the AI revolution.
AI pump.
But learn to code. Dad planted this vineyard 20 years ago, kind of on a whim. Just he had a bunch of apple trees that stopped producing and he wanted to plant something different, and his buddy was going to buy all the grapes from him, and then he just started making wine from it and got some great reviews, and I knew my dad didn't know what he was doing, so I wanted to start a business when I was 25 and figured if he could figure it out, I could figure it out. So just started making wine, and there's something just special about this area, this vineyard and Pinot Noir in Colorado that has made it my job to make great wine super easy and super easy to pick up. So it's been a fun journey.
And like I said, I'm not biased, but seriously, the best Pinot Noir I've ever had. And on top of that, I know a lot of alcohol makes you feel like crap. I know in today's society too, the amount of alcohol consumption has pretty much tanked compared to most of human history. But I also think if they had your wine, it's not like they would start, becoming alcoholics, but I feel like you would start having a little bit of wine with some meals because, again, I don't know, I've never felt like crap after having yours. How or what do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
So there's a lot of things, and it's not just with the wine. I mean, there's a lot of things with our modern diet that make us feel worse after we drink. But if you're looking just at the alcohol, when you look at wine, a wine bottle in the store, the only thing in the ingredients that you might see is contains sulfites at the bottom in small print. And that's basically the extent of what's required for ingredients on a wine bottle. And that's there no matter how many sulfites you use. So if you use a small amount like I do, or if you load it up with this preservative, it has the same ingredients label, contains sulfites. But there's 75 different ingredients you can put in a wine bottle in America without saying what that is. And whatever you're having a bad ailment with, a bad reaction to, is, I don't know. I can't tell you which one of those it is, and it's a black box for every single wine bottle. You have no idea. You can ask the winemaker, maybe you could figure it out. But what I find is if you look for wine that's natural, low intervention, or just a smaller producer, you're generally gonna feel a lot better. And honestly, I drink a lot of just French and Italian wine if I don't know what's going on, because the way they make wine is more in tune with their ancestors, the thousands of years of history. And so they are less incentivized, or their just main process is to keep it more natural. So what I do is I try and keep it as close to just the grapes as possible. I add the smallest amount of sulfur, and also sulfur is in all wine. It occurs naturally. And then I don't add anything else outside of oak. And what I get is a wine that doesn't leave you feeling like a horrible headache the next day. I didn't really understand this getting into wine. And it just kind of got to a point where I realized that hangovers are optional, in the sense that when I drink my wine, almost like however much I drink of it, I know I'm gonna wake up the next day and I might be tired, I might have stayed up late, but I know I'm not gonna have this debilitating hangover. Whereas if I drank a bunch of someone else's wine or a bunch of tequila or beer or whatever, I'd wake up the next day and I'd lose the entire day. So I'm very much a proponent of drinking to enhance life's beautiful moments, drink to enhance a great meal, great time with friends. But if you can do it without sacrificing so much, without giving up the next day, it really, allows you to live in the moment a lot more and enjoy what you're doing. And as I said, it's like, it's an option. You can drink something that doesn't make you feel horrible. It's just not prevalent. It's not thought of as possible. And you just have to kind of experiment and find what works for you. And in wine, the natural, low intervention, generally French and Italian, you're going to be a lot better off. And once you kind of experience this, it's pretty wild to have a fun night doing whatever you're doing and wake up the next day feeling fine. It still honestly blows my mind.
Well, I like how you phrase it too. So just some of the reasonings why you have it with just the social aspects and just elevating, you know, just the human experience in the context of just a night together with friends. I mean, that's what I do a lot with these travels, is talking on community, because that's huge for obviously everything, but especially for our food. Because to me, it goes hand in hand. Our disconnection from our food has really disconnected our communities. And so I think what you're doing is just one small way to really help rebuild communities in a way. And I'm just curious then, what's just been some of the feedback been from people? Have they shared any like pictures or experiences having your wine?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of skepticism because people are like, no, that's crazy. When you drink, you feel horrible. And then they drink my wine and they're like, yo, I actually felt great the next day. That was amazing. I need more. And, you know, wine is like it's an art form. It's an agriculture product, so much more than pretty much any beverage, but also basically any alcohol, that it really connects you to this sense of place. I have the barrier to recreate my wine is having this vineyard and doing it exactly like I did in that exact year. So it's impossible. So the wine community is awesome. People really share what they do, try and educate, build. A lot of wineries around here, everyone really brought me in and was nice and educating me and helping me along getting started. And that's because you want your area to be known. So it's a community aspect in this of like, the best thing that could happen for my business, for my winery, is my wine gets some crazy review or does really well, whatever. The second best thing is my neighbor's wine does that, because you start seeking out these senses of place in wine and these flavors that you cannot recreate elsewhere. So the only place to get that wine is Paonia, Colorado. And that really just needs to be spread more, because the wine is solid. The wine is good in a lot of different places, but it's really, you have to care about that place. Other people have to say it's good. It has to be good for a few years to really become known. And so my big thing is, educating about Colorado wine. It exists. It's really good. Pinot Noir from here is especially incredible. And then wanting to, connect you to that sense of place in your wine. And most wine on the shelf is really just a beverage. It's a food experiment, basically. It's made in a lab by winemakers who just want to create this wine that tastes exactly the same year to year, or you get bad grapes and you want to taste it good, so you add a bunch of stuff to it. That's what's going to make you feel bad. And you lose the magic, you lose that sense of place, and it just becomes, oh, I'm drinking another Cab Sauv that tastes just like all the other Cab Sauvs. And it's hard because wine is intimidating. It's like, there's so much jargon and there's so much classism and elitism in wine that it's intimidating to even want to learn, to ask questions, because you just kind of get told all these things that you don't understand, or it's like you look like an idiot. And the only way to learn with wine is to, yes, learn from someone who knows some stuff, learn to taste and learn to really understand flavors, and to taste a bunch of different wines. And that gets expensive if you're really trying to step up beyond commodity wine. So it's hard to approach, and that makes it so it's easier to hide behind all the junk, behind a brand, because people are afraid to even ask questions. So I'm just trying to educate on like what is actually going on in the wine industry. There's just so much hidden stuff, so much like lack of magic, lack of connection to the earth and the product where it's grown, and the sense of place and the time and the year. And when you do connect all that, it can really bring in something special when you really appreciate the flavors and everything. But even then, like at the basis, if you don't feel horrible after drinking it, that's pretty special as well.
I love that. Because we're just walking around down the vines. What is the process of creating all of this I mean, from especially talking on, a certain time of the year, and then whenever that's happening, what exactly are you doing when you come out here too?
Right. So starting from the very beginning, you plant basically like kind of roots that have just been grafted off of a grapevine from somewhere else, and you get that in the ground. You're watering it and everything, but it's going to take about 3 years to really establish itself, and then probably in the 4th year you might get a good crop, but you really don't get like incredible wine until the vine's 20, 30 years old. 40, 50 is a young vine in Europe. And you end up with dieback every year. So we're
Dieback?
constantly training up. So
You said dieback?
well, I'm in Colorado, so we get hard freezes.
Okay.
And like in 2020, we lost the entire vineyard, and every vineyard in Colorado pretty much lost everything. What that means is it freezes back to the ground. The roots are still there, and then you got to train it all up. So here's a good one that honestly just went a little crazy, and we'll have to finish training this up. But essentially, this one died to the ground last year, and so it's sending up all these shoots, and we did our best to stay with it and train it back up. But ultimately, we got some long shoots. Those will get on the vine next year, and they'll produce a small amount of grapes. And then the 3rd year, they'll be fully going and producing a big amount of grapes, and hopefully stay alive for longer than that. But that's constantly happening in this vineyard. There's constantly some dying to the ground and coming back up. It's just harsh winters. Like we're the highest elevation wine region in North America, so we're kind of on the edge of stuff.
And then you said you're training them. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so training them means basically it's a vine, so it's gonna just go crazy everywhere. And so we're just training it up onto the trellis system so that it grows where we want it to grow, basically. And I'm pretty laissez-faire with the training. I think that you're gonna get vineyard management from all different people, all different opinions. I mean, everyone does their own thing. I do what my dad did, I do a little bit more than what my dad did, which was he let things go. I'm a little bit more aggressive with telling the vines what to do as far as things go, but ultimately, like, they're just kind of going to do their thing because they grow so quick once they start going. So yeah, they'll start coming up from the ground, and then a few years in, you get more established ones. They start producing more grapes, but if it freezes to the ground, you lose that year of grapes from that vine. So last year we lost about a third. The year before, 2 years before, we had great crops. It's just kind of a constant cycle.
So whenever you're starting out, do you plant a lot more vines than necessary because you go in expecting that's possible, or?
So you plant what you can. You plant the space you can, right?
Yeah.
And you probably, the first couple of years, especially for us, I mean, with the cold winters, like, you're probably gonna have to go back and replant a few dead spots to really get the vineyard going. But once the vineyard's going, you're pretty much good. It's all gonna come back after a hard freeze. It's just you lose that year.
Yeah.
And then the next year you're good. So 2020, that winter, the first freeze it was 70 degrees it was like this really nice weather into late October, and then all of a sudden it dropped to 13 degrees for the first freeze of the year. And so everything above ground got zapped. So I didn't get any grapes in 2021, which was right at the beginning when I was doing this. So it was kind of scary. But then the next year we got a little bit, and then the 3rd year after that, I got the best crop I've ever had. So that's honestly what I'm currently selling, is that best crop I've ever had, the 2023 Pinot. So over time, you can spread out. I age wine for 2 years, so I have a bit of flexibility. I have time. I know what's in my cellar. I know if I need to produce more, produce less. I can only produce as much as I can from this vineyard, but I can buy grapes elsewhere to supplement, change prices, manipulate just how fast it goes out, right? But in the beginning, when it was just, I don't have anything, so I need something. And so you can buy grapes from all over the United States and still make them in a super high quality way. It's just, when you're making wine and trying to like build up what you do really well, it's got to be your vineyard. And so that's what I'm most proud of, is the Pinot Noir. I make other wines and I love them, but the Peony Lane is synonymous with Pinot Noir, and the rest of the wines I'm making in the same style. I'm making in the same way that I make them with low additives and all that. But really the sense of place is like the vineyard that you manage. and the wine you make all in one is where the magic is. So
I mean, it makes sense because you're just more connected,
yeah,
and kind of like you just on a long enough time horizon, you just really start to understand it all.
totally.
And
Yeah,
so it makes the processes
Yeah.
better and more efficient.
So here's a vine that we trained up better last year. We'll go in and cut the remainder of what's come up. But these are two vines that we trained up. So one going either way. These just started up from the bottom just like this. And we just continuously cut out all this new stuff growing up to focus on these two. These two will establish, hopefully they'll survive the winter. And they'll produce a little bit of grapes next year, and then the third year they'll be even better. Pinot Noir, you've probably seen like big stalks of wine, like big vines. Pinot Noir is very finicky. It's both finicky in the grape growing and the winemaking. Like it's very susceptible to oxidation. And then in the grape growing, it's fragile. And we're not getting these huge trunks. So like vines will last maybe 5 years, probably max. And then we're constantly retraining. So we don't wait till it's totally dead. I'll probably retrain one more new one here as a backup next year, just to kind of keep it a little bit more stabilized because we do get a decent amount of die off. But yeah, the wine that is produced is awesome, so it's worth it.
And then do you keep a specific amount of space in between each vine?
Yeah, so these are, I believe, are 5 foot spacing. We planted a new vineyard and did 6 foot spacing because these are super vigorous and could use more.
I was gonna say, what happens? Is there any issues if two vines like start growing and they're like connecting?
They
with
just
one
start
another?
blocking the sun for each other, and it gets really dense. But there's all different growing techniques. Some people plant super close, some people plant super far, some people make it into a bush. It's all kind of just like what grows well or how the vine grows in your area, and it's extremely location specific.
Yeah.
So you can learn from other winemakers in your area, you can learn from different techniques, but until you plant a vineyard, you don't really know. And when you plant a vineyard, it better last for 40 years. So
Just skin in the game.
yeah,
That's what it comes down to. I mean, that's what I try to push for people just growing their own food in general.
yeah,
Is you go to a grocery store and you see everything stocked, but you genuinely have no idea how much work goes behind it all. And then once you start growing your own food, or you don't have to, you can just go visit a farm. You have more skin in the game, and so you start to understand what it actually takes.
yeah. I mean, I think even just having a small garden, you get an idea, you know. Everyone's going to have setbacks and everything. And so you kind of just learn from that. And it's small scale, whatever, but it's cool.
What's just the biggest aspect too is there's elements out of your control, the weather, like you just described with your grapes.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand at all because we are so accustomed to where food doesn't matter which fruit, vegetables, we have it year round. And for most of our history, that's not how it has been.
No.
And yeah, to me, again, it's because there's no skin in the game. So yeah, having a garden changes that.
Yeah, so I mean, the hard freezes, the temperatures, that's out of our control. There's not really anything we can do to heat 3 acres, you know. And then last year, talking to the other vineyards around that experienced some of the same things, what we've kind of collectively hive mind thought is we all kind of lost big chunks of our vineyard due to a really dry winter. It just didn't snow much last winter. And our water, we have really good water here. Like I have water for another 10 days till mid-October, but a lot of people get shut off in July. And so there's only so much you can do watering wise. And you know, that makes it whether land can be farmed or not, depending. But I try and water these as like little as possible. I want the roots to shoot super far down and tap into the groundwater, tap into all that new soil, as opposed to if you have a drip irrigated vineyard, the roots are just going to be stuck in a ball up at the top because that's where they're incentivized to be. So I want the roots to go super far down, really connect with the soil, really connect with everything and bring all those nutrients up so that my wine doesn't just become whatever I fertilize it with. Because ultimately, if you're just drip irrigating and fertilizing because that area of the soil is getting depleted, your wine just becomes whatever you fertilize with and you really lose that sense of place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then whenever you're walking around, just looking at it, how do you determine when it needs to be watered? Or like if there's a specific area that really needs to be taken care of?
So I screwed up this year. This is my first year being fully in charge of the vineyard. I was helping my dad and buying the grapes from him before, but now I'm fully doing this. And it changes a little bit because our neighbors have a peach farm and they just installed drip irrigation, so they were flooding, so we didn't need to water as much. And so it's kind of changed over the last couple of years. And all this grass that we're standing on was super brown, and there was areas up in the far end that way of the vineyard that weren't really coming out early spring. They weren't really going, and the rest of the vineyard was. And so I watered that and they started going, but unfortunately I watered that after I would have needed to really get good grape production from that. So this kind of being my first year fully in charge of everything here, I just didn't notice it. And now what I'll do is probably hit early spring water going hard, get everything going, established, and then as you get close to ripening, you don't want to water a ton because it soaks into the grapes. It makes it more watery. You want a more concentrated wine.
Perfect. So this vine's going real well, to put it lightly. I guess my question too, I know it's probably with age and other elements, but how come this one is just really grown a lot versus, say, some of these other ones?
So a lot of them just died back last year.
Okay.
And these are just more established, and this is the end of the growing season. So we already picked, and
When do you typically pick?
Late September to early October. So we've picked as of like today, previous years, but this vine specifically is just well established. It's got a few extra shoots because we train up more than we need just in case we get dieback. And then everything's growing like crazy because midsummer things just grow like 2 feet a week, like insane growth out of these. So what we'll do is we'll cut off everything basically to where it's only, each vine has only 4 points where it'll grow. And so this will look completely different. Everything that's green here is going to be cut off, and it's just going to be cut back to like the trunk of the vine basically. So that'll be done in the spring once kind of the hard frosts are over, and then we get bud break in early May. So we're one of the last things. So a hard freeze in the spring, we'll get apricots, peaches, cherries, everything else here, but it doesn't get grapes because we're the last thing to put out and then about the last thing to pick. So yeah, everything here is cut. I'll come in with a hedge trimmer sometimes just to clear it out a little bit, and then we go in with pruning shears.
So what happens if, say, you don't do that and just let it continue to grow?
So then you kind of just get grapes everywhere. The ripening gets a lot less stable, a lot less uniform. So you don't really know when to pick. Just you get some unripe grapes, some super ripe grapes, and it's just hard to manage at a certain point as well. So you do that to kind of keep it tame and then keep it more uniform, so that everything is the same, so you know right when to pick, so everything's kind of on the same template. And yeah, then it would just get too crazy. It would turn into a bush, and you'd have a hard time even picking.
Well, so you said, taking over essentially from your father. Does he help, or is this mainly just you doing everything?
He's my guy that I ask, and then I have the other winemakers that I ask questions to. But I've learned by doing. So I kind of just come in here, and then when I have questions, I look it up or ask people. I'm not afraid to be stupid. So that's probably one of my superpowers, is just asking dumb questions and kind of just going for it. And so this past year, we went for it. We experimented a little bit and kind of figured out what we wanted to do, because I knew my dad did like the bare minimum, that if that could produce really good wine, if I can just learn a few other tricks, I'll be able to produce incredible wine still. So really by doing it, just me and one other guy do this a couple days a week and sell wine, make wine, everything else the rest of the week.
Very cool. All right, I think that's it then.